like to ask each of the panelists to tell us, have they actually seen Nosferatu, and what did they think of it?
We're gonna do the whole, shall we do our?
Yes. Every version that I have been able to find, I have seen, including the 2023 version. It kind of flew under the radar. You saw that too?
Yeah, the one with Doug Jones.
I don't know any of the actors' names. Was that
The one where they use like digital backgrounds?
Yes.
Yes. It's the
black and white version? Yes.
Yeah.
We don't have to linger on that one, but it was interesting. I liked some of the things they did. Long way of saying yes, and I really liked the 2024 Eggers version. It lived up to everything I had hoped it would be.
Say I've seen the OG 1922, which feels weird to say. Seen the English language version of the Herzog film, which now I'm realizing I'm like, oh shit, I have to double back and Herzog some more. And I've seen I've not seen the Doug Jones Nosferatu, but I have seen the Bill Skarsgård's what can we say? Prosthetic ding-a-ling in this yes, I've seen the one with Bill Skarsgård and parts of Bill Skarsgård that are not Bill
all
Skarsgård.
of Bill Skarsgård.
Anyway,
The full Skarsgård.
The illusion of full Skarsgård.
So yeah, I've seen the original 1922 Nosferatu in English and in German, and then we did see the 2024.
Yeah, and I have seen the 1922 original film. I've seen the English version of the Werner Herzog version. I didn't even know there was a German version, so I'm gonna have to go and try and find that. And yes, I've seen the Robert Eggers one as well. And they're all uniquely similar and yet different to each other. So I enjoyed all three of them. The Robert Eggers one definitely lived up to my expectations as well, and was very much his interpretation of it.
And as you might have already heard, there's multiple cuts of the 1922 version, and you almost have to be a scholar dedicated to knowing all the different cuts to identify them, because to our eyes, we might say, well, this one looks better, or this one has a color tint to it. But someone who's really deep into it will be able to identify what year that particular version got cut, or what year it got cut in, because it made the rounds, so to speak.
Yeah, I will say that is both the history of how that ended up. Early film history is always kind of a spicy area in terms of locating prints, restoring prints, assembling what different people saw in different markets just due to the way that film was disseminated. But the history of Nosferatu is especially spicy, so we can probably speak to that some later as an aspect of how that film came to be.
Yeah, we should. For anyone in the room who might not know about the history of the 1922 film, it is a fun story.
Yeah, I was thinking, we introduced ourselves. How did, I think I would,
You got it.
Oh,
so can we just admit that?
yes, we may. We're
Cool.
I've said the word on stage.
Yeah, we've already. Okay.
How many Skarsgårds did you have tonight?
But I was thinking we should all say, how did you come to Nosferatu? Because I feel like, yes, now everybody has heard of it, of course. With the 2024 movie, not everybody, till recently, not a lot of people, I feel like, knew about it, relatively speaking.
For me, I was exactly the right age for the "then who was flickering the lights" gag on SpongeBob, where they reveal, watching the actual film and being like, oh, that's where that still of Nosferatu is from. And no, he isn't flickering the lights. Just that my earliest experience of that film, I'm fairly certain, was in the early days of YouTube. Probably not a great restoration, but wanting to understand that in my same era, wanting to understand a lot of German expressionism on film for some reason. But that was my entry point.
I was somehow aware of the 22 film through osmosis, but I think it was the SpongeBob reference that made me go, oh yeah, I need to sit down and watch that and figure out what that's really about, because somehow I knew what it meant. I got the joke without having seen the film. So I think I went and found the film shortly after that, and it was not a great copy, which made it way spookier to watch a version that was kind of gritty and not totally in focus, maybe didn't even sound that good.
That's so interesting.
So I first saw it as a German student, actually. My husband, who's in the room, was also a German student. Anyway, and as part of that, definitely got introduced to just sort of 1920s, like late teens, German silent film, German silent film. So that's how I knew about it. And I've seen, I'm not even gonna try to like say how many versions, because how do you measure a version, like you said, to that scholarly point? So I've seen probably a few different ones. And I have actually seen it twice with live music accompanied, so that's different scores, so that's a little bit.
That's terrific.
What I always tell people who have never seen it, if you want to see the 1922 version, wait until October. Somewhere, someone will show a version with a live orchestra or live music accompaniment. That's the way to see it.
You need that experience. That sounds.
Oh yeah.
I had a very.
Just keep your eyes peeled in September. Someone will do it somewhere in the cities in October.
Yeah, it's I know there's Curse of the Vampire Orchestra, and we saw them, and they do it around Halloween, I think.
Yeah.
And he wrote his own score. The conductor wrote his own score for it. So definitely recommend that. I was gonna say, because I think hopefully people find it humorous, I'm going to admit I was someone when they said they're remaking Nosferatu. I was like, why do you need to remake that? And then I went, oh, it's been 102 years.
It's okay. They can take a whack at that. Which is also, I'm gonna be candid, my response as well, very much. Can't we just have another Dracula? And in a sense, we did have another Dracula, which there's a layer of going back to the well with Bram Stoker's text that I think is really fun with the Eggers film, but I feel like very much, I love all my children equally, and then I don't care for Werner Herzog. But there's so much to that text that I was pleasantly surprised by the movie not making me nerd rage.
I feel like the Nosferatu films are in conversation with each other in a way the Dracula films are not. I feel like when someone remakes Nosferatu, they look back at 1922 and they say, what can I say back to Murnau and Grau 100 years ago? And what can I improve, and what do I need to keep? I don't think people making Dracula adaptations proceed that way. Every now and then, there's always someone's like, well, we gotta out Bela Lugosi, but they aren't looking back at 1931 and saying, what do we need to do to speak back to this film in the same way Nosferatu films seem to do?
One of the things that I found really remarkable about the Eggers film was the way that it felt like it was using the language of cinema, especially to convey the power that Orlok has over his space. In particular, when you have Thomas entering, Orlok's like his, I guess what would have been his dining room once upon a time, and that sense of the camera's moving and Thomas is being moved almost against his will. And I got across a really palpable sense of dread just through the use of, moving a camera on a track, something that, movie magic, that kind of situation where it's like, okay, this effect is very simple, but it is very powerfully employed. And rewatching the 1922 film, I got that sense of like, oh right, movie magic. And so much of that film, I feel like it does have stuff going on in terms of, especially the natural world, that is just not Eggers' bag as a director. From what I've seen with his work, he's not ultra concerned with that, but that is an aspect that Herzog really draws out to great effect. So I think it's that aspect of everybody kind of finds what they need in that text and takes it out for a walk is very interesting to me. I love texts that are adapted a lot.
There's been a couple questions that have
Yeah.
been waiting for a minute. Do we want to do that?
Hi, I'm sorry, but I'm not sure if we are talking when you say the first version. You say I have seen it in German, I have seen it in English, and you are right. It's a silent film. So are you three talking about different versions of the same film?
I think you're talking about the Herzog version, right?
Oh, yeah. Pardon.
Oh, sorry.
The big area for language divergence is in I think it's 1979, the Herzog film. With the original 1922 film, because it's silent, I want to say like you get different title cards and they're based on kind of different versions, but because it is silent, it does have that versatility of it just depends on wherever they recovered that print of the film from. So you're right, that it's the language is only really a big issue with either the later kind of sound films or getting into the details of where each print comes from.
Thank you.
Thanks. That was an excellent question.
My question, my question is about the modern Nosferatu film. Like, what's your interpretation of what is Nosferatu trying to do? Like, it seems like at the end of the movie, well, like, I'm pretty sure we've all seen the movie, so I'm just gonna spoil it right now. Probably, like, Nosferatu is dead. Like, what was he trying to do there? What was the point?
That is the question I ask at the end of that film every time, which is, what would have happened if he'd gotten away with it? What was the next step? Was it just to possess Ellen and then go back to sleep again for another 100 years? Or were they going to unite and rule the Plain Kingdom together? I'm not sure, and I'd be curious to hear what other people have to think about that. What was the plan?
I do feel like it's a really interesting, again, another departure from Bram Stoker's Dracula as a text that's being adapted. In that, Dracula's plan very much is like, all right, I'm gonna take over. Like, I'm gonna embrace modernity and I am going to sneakily invade Britain. And it is kind of in dialogue with other literature about kind of the anxiety of a empire that had done a lot of colonization, the fear that you might be in return colonized, which is a whole other panel. But in the 1922 Nosferatu, the plague element almost takes the fore. There's this almost unthinking aspect, even as he, theoretically, he's buying real estate. Their house is right across the street from the Hutters', which is, there's Herr Knock pointing across the street, says, you're gonna live right across from them. It's like, oh, it's a small world, huh? But the sense of what he's looking for is very hard for me to read in that film. I feel like in the Herzog film, he's much more philosophical and kind of a little bit ennui riddled, but with Eggers, I can almost only read it as he is almost at not this hard to choose these words given their dynamic is so bad. It's painful. Their dynamic is very painful, but I get this sense of almost. It's like he's Ellen's sleep paralysis demon in that film. Like he's there because she's there, rather than because he had separate plans.
Yes, I agree. Can I go off topic for 1 second?
Sure.
If anyone's read the Swedish or Icelandic versions of Dracula that were kind of uncovered in the past few years, those throw into sharp relief just how vague Dracula / Orlok's plans are in both the original novel and in the film. In those adaptations, it's very clear. Dracula has a plan for coming to Europe and coming to England, and not only a plan for once he gets to England, he has a plan to sow his seeds into all levels of government and take over civil society. After reading that, I realized just how bad of a planner Dracula was in the Stoker novel. What is he doing?
He's just going.
What do you want to do, Dracula? I don't know. I want to get to England and then I'll just play it by ear.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel that way a little bit in the 1922 Nosferatu especially, but still in the 2024 version, which I think does a better job of at least explaining why he's going to England. I still don't know what his plan is after he accomplishes the goal of possessing Ellen. But I would like to hear what other people have to say about that too.
I was gonna say, do you have thoughts? You wanna say Nate? This is when
Yeah,
I
I
use
was
it.
kind of sad in my head too. I was like, I wasn't really sure what his plan was beyond that and what was on the film, so.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's a little bit of a, I was watching the Eggers Nosferatu with a friend who ended up hating it. She's a big partisan of the Herzog Nosferatu. And one of her big takeaways is basically like, so what's going on with him? You know, what is he as an entity doing when he's not bedeviling Thomas and Ellen? Which is like, I mean, I'm perfectly happy to watch that. I enjoy a very up close and personal monster. But I do feel that sense of, I would have loved to see Eggers do a little bit more with kind of what his expectations of what he's going to achieve with Ellen look like, even if what he does achieve with her ends up getting murked as is customary. I'm like,
I think a few people in the audience have a take on that and I'd like to share.
you got a blue pound sign?
I think the idea of him literally stating that I am an appetite, and that he has, I love the clarity that she has awoken, like that he is there for her, he exists like in that realm. I just would love your take on that, like that switch of power from like even just the 1922 to the Eggers. I think he does such a great job of respecting and completely homaging the 22, but also really empowering both of the women characters actually, and what that is for you.
Oh, is that a question at the?
Both. All.
Yes. Hell yeah. Oh man, I really enjoy 2024 Ellen, and I feel like she's also kind of an odd duck. That's from the jump. I was watching the phone with my sister, and she's like, Ellen seems like a real bummer at a party. Like when Ellen's like already from the jump, she's basically having her moment of like, I'm really troubled. I know something bad is coming, and I'm just like, oh, don't worry about it, babe. Like we're by the seaside. Come pick up some seashells with me. Like the sense of she's always been an introspective, kind of an unusual, dreamy person, and I do feel like Eggers really draws out into sharp relief the aspect of not just like this is not her first rodeo with Orlok, but the aspect of kind of this is something from her own past, like a very, very direct return of the repressed, this experience that she's been told, you know, don't talk about it. All the doctors say don't talk about your experiences, you know, shove it down, don't tell your husband, kind of. It makes her ultimately articulating to Thomas, like, yeah, I know this guy. Like, I may or may not have accidentally summoned this guy. And then it's almost like, it's to a degree, I feel like it exonerates her of, there's a tendency, and I think that this is a little bit present, though not as present as imitators have it in the Coppola Dracula, to imply, you know, oh yeah, you know, Mina's just pretending to be reluctant. Like it's just a weird game that women do, because sometimes women play hard to get. Whereas the sense with Ellen, where it's like, her attraction to him may be very real, but her desire to have him kill her friends and family does not exist. Like that sense of him being both attractive and repulsive is something that she has to be able to articulate to her husband to be able to being able to talk about that is kind of the first step for her being able to address it murderously.
I was gonna say, with that, I do feel like having watched both the Edgars and the 1922 really close together, I watched 2024, first, and then I went and watched 1922, and I was surprised at like Ellen how much I was seeing in 1922 that felt like it did line up with 24, but it's like Edgar's took a deeper dive, because like one of the things I think of is she seems to have this like connection of some kind, that there's something else out there before Thomas even leaves, even if she doesn't know it's Orlok specifically. So
She also seems to have kind of a psychic bond with her husband, which I love.
Yeah.
That's an aspect where 1922 Thomas is, I will say, a little bit grating for me, an odd experience. He is, and some of this is because of my lack of familiarity with kind of the conventions of silent film in that era. I remember the first time I was watching, I was like, why is he laughing so much? Like he's on a par with Herr Knock in terms of, you're too cheerful about this. Like this is not hitting you the way that it should be hitting you, and it made the relative ominousness of the 2024 film delightful. But I do like the aspect of her being already kind of a mystic I think also it's very present in the Herzog adaptation, where she's super pensive and philosophical, but it makes in the 2024 film, I've got my mind really in another century. It's dark times. It makes von Franz being like, in another life, you would have been a great priestess of Isis, very vindicating. Like that sense of, there is a world where this kind of weird psychic girl who has premonitions is really cherished and valued, rather than her being treated pretty rottenly by everyone in her life, save for Willem Dafoe.
let's see, the pink with the hashtag,
Um,
pound sign.
Yeah, thank you, yeah. Pound sign, yes.
No, the first time I heard someone call the pound sign a hashtag, I just was like, what?
Yeah, I'm of a certain age too, so it's like, yeah, I was like, hashtag, it's now hashtag, so.
Tic-tac-toe is timeless as well.
But as far as Orlok's plan, for me, it was more that it was just a matter of hunger. And if you want to be politically metaphorical, capitalism. It consumes without really a plan. The only plan is more and more and more. If you want to be biblical, greed and gluttony. Just more and more and more, not really a plan. The only thing is to have more. And then tying in what you said, there's also, if you want to get even more sociological with it, patriarchy, where he has all of this power, but he has no control over the wiles and the magic that this woman spins and is drawn to the woman. So it's all about, so if you want, depending on which metaphor you want to go with, I think the part that there is no plan could be part of the point. Like if you want to use these metaphorical viewpoints, these metaphorical anchors, like a point is that they really do have no plan. Their only plan is to consume and control, and it's only about more.
I really like that also as a dovetail with the plague connection, where I feel like each film has a really agonizing riff on that aspect of infectious disease. The idea that a germ doesn't set out with a plan other than to replicate itself.
Right.
With the end of the Herzog version, it's like, oh, this one's about contagion.
Which is so especially, and another thing that I found interesting is that the 2024 film, Lily Rose Depp's performance really draws not just on Isabella Gianni in the 1979 film, but Isabella Gianni in Possession, which is a film that I love and that is really getting its flowers right now in terms of its influence on horror, but how physical and how intense her performances really impressed me as somebody who hasn't seen her really getting to do heavy duty acting before. But I feel like that aspect of her being very physically afflicted by Orlok even before he physically arrives is a really interesting part of that. His disease metaphor.
To the plague point, no one's really sure what the origin of the word Nosferatu is. They know when it first started popping up in print, in English print, but there's a lot of controversy over whether it was an invented word or a misunderstood word. But that being said, there's a Greek and Latin root that sounds very similar to Nosferatu that means plague carrier. So I have to believe that Grau and Murnau in 1922 might have been aware of that when they embraced the name Nosferatu for their character, because it's almost a throwaway word in the original Dracula. I think it's said one time in the original Dracula. Stoker got it from an earlier book by Emily Gerard, who brought it up as a word that was used in Romania for vampire-like creatures, but there's not any real solid documentation that she understood the exact word, or maybe she got that word wrong, or maybe borrowed it from, and even a different text from Czechoslovakia, I think. There's other people who really have tried to drill down and find the etymology of that word, and it's not a very satisfying answer so far, except that there's some tantalizing possibilities.
I was going to say, another aspect of the capitalism reading of it, there's a very financial reading of the 2024 Dracula that is very, especially with how much of a driver, both Thomas being like, no babe, I'm sorry, I have to go, I have to get that promotion so we can buy our own house to live in, because they're currently renting, and they have their very cozy, kind of Biedermeier era.
Thank you for saying Biedermeier, good word.
Yeah, they're
very important for this film.
They've got their potted plants, they've got their cross stitch, like it's very cozy in a very early Victorian way, it's a little bit kitsch. But Ellen's basically like, I didn't want a bigger house. Like I wanted to be spending time with my husband, who I have insane chemistry with. And that aspect of almost rivalry with, this is killing me. I'm like the Hardings, with them being both comparatively so much more bourgeois and established, but also they have a lot more to lose in terms of getting their kids murked. Which is also feels like a very Robert Eggers touch. He is quite comfortable killing children in his films, and that felt particularly pointed. Yeah. Although the fact that the cat is just fine also makes me laugh. He wants us to establish, do not worry, Greta is just fine, and Greta is named after the actress who plays the OG kind of heroine of 1922 Nosferatu.
Can we do a couple more questions? I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know who was up first.
I think it was her.
Yes, we got her.
Just to like piggyback even more off that, it never bothered me that there didn't seem to be a long-term plan, because in the film at least, long-term planning was human almost, like the long-term plan of, oh, I'm gonna, like, the house and the kids, like, see in the future where they want to be instead of the present, while, like, in the film, it definitely felt like he was just a creature of hunger. Like, even when he knew, oh, I might die if I have sex with her, he didn't care. He still went with his instincts to do it. So it was very much like creature versus humans caring about the future versus creature just instincts.
I like that spin that everyone is making plans except him.
Yeah, he's very action-oriented. It's interesting to me that I felt that, in particular with really drawing out the motif from the 1922 film of all the documents with these weird scribblings on them, this kind of occult theme with Herr Knock and with connecting him with Orlok, the implication that he's basically a wizard, that he was once much more recognizably a man about town than he is now with Orlok. It was a really interesting spin for me, in the sense of him as maybe in the past he had plans and ambitions, but at this point he's got a one-track mind.
Orange hashtag in the back. I think you've been having that for a while.
I have two relatively brief comments. I personally feel like Orlok's 2024 rendition is a lot more obsession driven. That he has like a visceral thirst for Ellen that isn't quite as strongly depicted in the 2020 or 1922. That he's so single-minded in 2024. He's just obsessed, and I think that's why there's not a bigger scope presented for his plans, because all he cares about is her, getting to her, and screwing her. And then, tangented from that, and backtracking a little bit, I know that it is a thing for like women to fake their interest, but it's also a thing for women to fake their consent.
Yep.
And I feel that she consented reluctantly in order to continue the greater good once she found out that Orlok would cease to exist.
Yeah, ultimately, I feel like her, and that is the one thing where I would say I enjoy between the 79 and the 2024 versions. In 1979, it's almost like that Ellen Lucy, which is so weird for me as a Dracula fan. She's basically like, all right, if nobody else is gonna do it, like, all right, I'll get this done. And that sense of her being very take charge, which is, I feel kind of shared with 2024 Ellen, that sense of she's achieving this objective, and it is kind of, in a way, a very weird way that can only really happen in the context of a horror film, that sense of it being, she is kind of driving that encounter in a way that rewrites the script of her earlier experiences with Orlok, which, as on a metaphor level, I really enjoy, but also as a level of kind of her laying the trap and then letting it close on him is very, it's much more, it feels in the Herzog's Nosferatu feels a little bit like he's kind of going, he kind of wants to die. That sense of him being, you know, at the end of what he wants to live is strong, but the sense of he's kind of thrown himself on the rocks of Ellen being willing to bone down this one time.
Yeah, I saw an article right after it came out that like the last scene is a celebration of consent. I was like, no.
That's a very
Okay.
I would say that the celebrations of consent are all the times where like Thomas and Ellen are like the scene where they're at the party, they're having a quickie while their friends are away, and he kneels down so that she can like kind of like clamber up and kiss him. Like that sense of, it is really interesting to me that there'll be a very easy way to make that film where it's like, yes, you know, Orlok is pure appetite, he's pure animal sexuality, and Thomas is just kind of a little weedy sad man who can't satisfy her. But the sense of like, oh no, like sexuality is something that she's very awake to and that she shares with Thomas is much more complicated, and it makes both of them being preyed on in such an intensely sexual way feel like a thing that brings them weirdly like closer together as a couple, as well as kind of two. I joke about Thomas in the 2024 film being a male gothic heroine, but he does have that aspect of he's now shared this experience that now it's Ellen who's the one who's able to articulate it, and he's the one who's having a hard time putting words to what he's experienced.
Oh, green hashtag.
Yeah, so very quickly, I'm really enjoying this discussion. I'm a literature professor, and but I love the way that the only person who has clarity of vision of the whole plan is Von Franz. And I just wondered what you guys thought of my read of the film, that it's really an elaborate plan by Von Franz to get that cat.
That was mine. That's 100% mine.
Right?
Because he does say something
he's
about
so happy
Well,
with
that
that
was part
cat
of
at
it.
the end, and everybody else is dead. Oh well.
Yeah.
You can't save her. You can't save her, we really can't.
If I remember the 79 version right, someone correct me on this, Ellen figures out how to kill the vampire by reading it in a book on her own.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in the other versions, Von Franz, our Van Helsingberg stand-in, explains it to her. Right? She figures it out on her own in the Herzog version.
I believe so. But some of that is Lucy in the Herzog version. he's basically like, you need to have faith, and she says, faith is believing what you know, like pretending to believe what you know isn't true, which is a very, very, there's such a weird kind of existentialist thread through the 79 film, but, which I love, and I think is very much Herzog's wheelhouse, but I think that her being the relative driver of that is almost because she's got a slightly more both bookish and a little bit more cynical read on the situation than her Van Helsing in that film does, who does feel a little bit less of a wizard than von Franz.
How about blue hashtag?
So one thing I noticed that near the end of the 2024 film, like when Nosferatu is there, like his influence kind of spreads to everyone, and his influence spreads to the idea of appetite, but not necessarily in a way that helps him. Like you see people off screen going more and more towards their urges. And I've been kind of noticing that, not only is Nosferatu like a being who really has this appetite, but he's also someone that spreads it, which may kind of go back to the plague metaphor.
Interesting. Oh yeah, with the plague stuff, that's a big thing with, in particular with, is it Friedrich Harding? The light necrophilia that he gets into, where it is this very strange moment of both intense grief and like being totally at the end of his reason, where it feels like that's a position where Orlok likes to drive people to, both with we see with kind of terrorizing Thomas to this point and terrorizing Ellen, that he is like this very like kind of the animal part taking control, which is also fun with the rat metaphor. Rats are minding their own business.
Rats are just doing rat things. How about
All right.
Melissa?
But very astute with the cat at the end. I think Alphonse did it. I was noticing while I was watching the movie, and while everybody might have different perspectives, that it felt like the cinematography was always slightly off-center. Whoever was speaking was slightly to the left or slightly to the right. It was meant to make us uncomfortable until Willem Dafoe showed up. And suddenly there was this sigh of relief. There's a character who's making us laugh and we can trust. So I feel like they really try to build in that we're supposed to trust that character. Because every other character is slightly to the left or slightly to the right, and he's just dead center making us laugh.
I'll admit, when I first saw the movie, people were laughing at every line Willem Dafoe delivered, and I didn't get it. I was like, what am I missing out?
Because
It's funny.
we had an hour of being extremely on edge and like this disturbing stuff, and suddenly he offers someone a beer, and we're like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, oh thank God. Yeah.
That's like, my goodness, that pipe.
That's a wonderful observation about kind of like the way that the language of cinema, the motion of the camera brings that out. One thing that I really love with Willem Dafoe's Von Franz that I would say is a little bit present with kind of his predecessors and with the Dracula novels, Van Helsing, but is very, again, I think it's something that Eggers really likes. He is such a wizard. Like that aspect of him, he's invoking these aspects of kind of Paracelsian magic. He's very, like he kind of participates to a degree in kind of Christianity the same way that Anna and the Hardings do, but he's very much doing his own thing, and that is in a strange way really comforting in a way that Anna, like, I don't say that moment where Anna gives Ellen her cross, like it's comforting to Ellen because it's coming from this woman she loves, rather than because she has a super strong connection to Lutheranism, ? That's the other thing with Wisborg being coastal. It has this odd, is it Germany, is it Scandinavia aspect that also feels very literal.
I have a question I would like to pose to the panel and maybe to the room as well. If most of us are fans of the 2024 film, are there things that you felt fell short in the 2024 film that other versions of Nosferatu did better? And I will answer my own question first while people think about that. I wanted some more falling action at the end. The sun came up and credits rolled. So a very old way of making films, a very 1922 and just post-silent way of making films. I liked the 1979 version. Had a little something go on at the end. I didn't need it to end the same way, but I liked that there was something that happened after to show us that we're still wrestling with the aftermath of this horrible plague that came to town. There still might be rats and there might be infected in town, and we're all going to be traumatized by this for a long time. I wanted something like that at the end of 2024. That was just me, but I wonder if there were other things that people saw or didn't see that you wanted from the 2024 film.
It's good. You know, it's gonna sound dumb, and I know the prosthetics and the makeup are all really impressive with Bill Skarsgård, but you know, I kind of just like this weird little look of Warlock from 1922, and you know, I kind of wanted something more like that.
Just a little guy.
Yeah, you know.
Almost an elf.
Yeah. I was gonna say, are you Nate? Once
Yeah,
again,
Nate.
like, oh yeah, Nate. Do you have thoughts? Yeah, I really.
Yeah, I have no idea what happened.
That's why it's so nice having the placards, because it can just be like Nate.
Yeah.
I definitely knew that.
There's so much about it that I really liked, but yeah, you kind of stole my answer. It's just that sort of abrupt ending to it, and just kind of wanting a little bit more of a coda on it, I guess.
Say for my part, I would have loved Ellen to kind of have sole ownership of the whole. You gotta trap that Dracula through your wiles and then let the sun come up kind of situation. And it does feel almost to a degree like a studio insight almost. Like somebody after this film was on the, you know, being prepared in the cutting room was like, hey, we need to have Willem Dafoe explain what she later goes on to do. Because you then get that back and forth of like, he says it, then he says it again, exactly what she's doing kind of coming from this text. And that felt a little on the nose to me, and I felt that either from previous familiarity with Nosferatu and Nosferates, with adaptations of Nosferatu, or just from being willing to trust the film, I felt like I would have loved to see Ellen be the real sole boss of that, even though I think Von Franz's support of her is really a beautiful part of the film.
Big circle, you're going to read for them.
Skip me for now. My comment has nothing to do with the question.
Okay.
I think it's blue
Pound sign.
pound sign.
I just wanted to mention, my mother and I saw the 79 movie in the theater, and we had already seen the 22 version, and there was an unintentionally funny scene that when we saw it, we just started laughing that they kept this in. The scene in the courtyard where this is our last supper, and you know, people are dancing around and stuff, and then there's these animals walking around loose, and there's this giant pig that comes walking through, and it gets up on mid-screen, and it takes a massive dump. And I just started laughing at that. I can't believe they just left that in.
I feel like there must have been a conversation where Werner Herzog specifically was like, no, we have to see that. If you don't see that, then the film will flop. We must include because it is a very animalistic
Auditioned
moment.
30 takes for that role. That was the pig.
That must have been extremely violent.
The pig's like, do I got it? Yes, it's part of the movie.
Yeah. Orange star sign.
Asterisk?
Asterisk.
Two things which I like at the very old version, the look of Max Schreck. They have made Nosferatu this way because Max Schreck looked so. He was a spindly, skinny guy, and for the whole movie they had not much money. That's the way it's called Nosferatu, and the story is a bit like Dracula because they hadn't the money for the copyright. And they have seen Max Schreck, and they have said, we just paint him white and make these rat tooth and and do your thing, Max Schreck, because he was famous for his monsters at that time, and that brings me to the next thing. The playing of very hard shadows and lights, and you can't make that if the movie is in color. They have used that because they had nothing else, but how it looks makes the magic of the film. Alone set scene where you see only the shadow of Max Schreck up the staircase, and the shadow slithers down in a very long, fairly long scene, like a demon from hell, and you don't need to see the actor. The shadow is enough. These long claw-like hands. That's
Yeah, the cinematography in the original film I still found it a little unsettling when I was watching it. It's very evocative and really tells the story. And I liked how Robert Eggers kind of carried that over to his version and did his own sort of take on that as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. I know that's something I commented on with my husband after we saw it. Shoot, did I just lose my thought? Can you repeat the last piece, like what you said before I started? Like that's a great point.
Just in terms of the use of shadow and lighting in the original version and how Robert Eggers carried that over and did his own take of it.
Yeah, and along that lines, I feel like even 1922's version has this, and I thought 2024 did it very well. Also did it well. They both do have that kind of, you're never quite comfortable. You may not be like scared per se, but you're like, you can't get comfortable. And I was noticing that, I noticed that in the original one too, like, there's just that sense of like dread or unease.
Yeah, sort of that growing dread and this impending sense of doom and just unease throughout. It just kind of grows throughout it. So yeah.
I love that you called out kind of Max Schreck's physicality, because he does have the thought of seeing him on stage and being like, "That's our Orlok." Like, it's really terrific, just because he is such a both uncanny and in many ways very delicate and very beautiful kind of actorly quality to that. That is, I touched on this before while we met, there is a film that is, I would say, a horror film set against the backdrop of the fictionalized making of Nosferatu called Shadow of the Vampire, that takes the premise of course, Orlok is being played by a real vampire who wants a real blood sacrifice from a real beautiful maiden.
Yep.
And that aspect of he's so uncanny that he's able to be mythologized in this way so far after the fact. Also played by Willem Dafoe, which is a funny piece of cross-casting. Yes. But it also feels like a testament to the nature of silent film that we don't know every little biographical detail of his life. So it's something where there's a little bit of an open space that people can slip into, kind of imagining what they will about somebody based just off of that electrifying, like the way that Orlok looks is so iconic and odd.
I think that might be one of the number one reasons that film has survived in the imagination for so long, is because of that look that was developed for him. And he's not a horrible looking human being when you see him out of the makeup. He's severe looking. Yeah. He's got a very intense look to him, but he's not repulsive. And I think he kept acting into the talkies. I believe he has some roles where he was in the talkies later on.
I looked that up the other day. I think you're
I haven't seen the other one.
Oh, I did hear a bit though, thinking of Max Schreck's look. I did hear recently, just listening to some like podcasts of other people talking about Nosferatu in prep for this panel, that apparently if you really pay attention, he does not blink. Except for, like, he just doesn't, and that adds to the uneasiness, or not the uneasiness, sorry, the sort of alienness of that character, that you're not quite human. Not Nosferatu, but Nicholas Hoult was in a movie called Warm Bodies, and he's a zombie, and it's wonderful, and the books are amazing. But he also, in that movie, I remember hearing it, and then when I went back and watched it, saw it, he also does not blink when he's like in zombie mode. Spoiler alert, he becomes unzombified by the end.
I joke about how Nicholas Hoult is cursed to be a really good-looking actor because he also loves to play weird little freaks. And I love this. I felt like he got to do a lot of, again, kind of intense, grotesque acting in this film, but it did make me imagine an alternate universe where he's because he's also quite tall. I'm like, I would be happy to see him as our Warlock and then Bill Skarsgård as our funny-looking Thomas. Funny, but quite handsome.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like swapping those.
Yeah, I'm like, let's swap those guys around. This is, I guess, I would say one of my questions for my fellow panelists. Robert Eggers talks kind of, I would say in a tongue-in-cheek way about how it was important to him to cast an actor who's, he describes him as like, oh, he's so classically handsome. Kind of Bill Skarsgård, having a handsome actor play Orlok because underneath that makeup, you know that he's a young, vigorous hottie, which was not, I will be candid, not my takeaway from watching that physical performance as Orlok. How do you guys feel about that? The thought of how much of a transformation the 2024 Orlok is versus Max Schreck doing a lot with only a little.
Okay, I got a confession to make. I did not realize that was Bill Skarsgård until the end credits. I was like, no way.
You were all the way in. You were.
Yeah, I was definitely in. It's such a unique portrayal of a vampire that he's kind of like got this decaying body, and yeah, in terms of the face makeup, I did not recognize him at all. So.
I agree. It didn't occur to me that no, this is the guy I saw in this other movie. I was locked in on him being Warlock for that film. And you know, there's other people can speak to this better than I can, but there is the contingency of monster fuckers out there who would speak to this way better than I could about how that is very attractive. And, and maybe it helps sell the creature as an attractive entity when you know that it's Bill Skarsgård underneath it.
I feel like it's odd because I definitely expected, especially in the moment where the whole "you are my affliction" scene where they're confronting each other, I kind of expected a Coppola Dracula thing to happen, where it's like, oh, now he's younger and hotter, like, okay. And then it didn't, which it really took me by surprise, and it made the commitment to how gnarly his body is, even as the layers of his, kind of the armor of his big coat and his big hat getting stripped away, he remains pretty wizened.
He missed a lot of lead days.
He really does look kind of mummified, which is another fun.
I appreciate it. I think maybe we finally rounded the bend a little bit on handsome vampires, and maybe we're getting back into ugly vampires for a while, which was overdue. And I know the pendulum will swing again. But I'm enjoying this moment of having horrific vampires for a little while.
Yeah. He's a very, as far as monster fucking goes, there's a range of monster fuckers out there, but I do feel like in particular, like the intensity of the physical performance that Bill Skarsgård gives really that's a role with a lot of zing. And I think that's a very fun aspect to bring to that role, especially the audio of just his voice, especially when the original film is silent.
Right. Do you want to get a couple more questions in before we have to wrap up?
Let's go orange in the back with the hashtag.
So the first time I saw the 1922 Nosferatu, I was actually on a high school film study course, and we talked about the off-centeredness and not blinking, and to really portray not just that he's not human anymore, but or ever human, but that he also has no social skills. That it was this very like calculated, calibrated way to portray him, to make you uncomfortable with him in general, and then realize that no, it's not a good thing. But it sets it up before you even know he's a vampire, that he is off.
How would a 2025 Nosferatu slide into your DMs? What would be the opener?
I don't know how he would do it, but it'd be unsuccessful.
Oh yeah, it'll be
His portrayal of his physical body in the 2024 is just decrepit. Awful. I hate it.
I do love that the costume designer has spoken about kind of the very furry, shaggy outfit that he first appears in his castle to Thomas with. And talks about how it's, at one time, this is a very fashionable, very luxurious, high-value male kind of outfit. Like this
The
is...
wardrobing in 2024 is
Oh
fabulous.
yeah, gorgeous. And like the idea of this is him kind of flaunting his status over Thomas, who's only a poor clerk, but the idea of underneath that, he's got nothing. Kind of, you take off the coat and there's nothing under
There's
there.
a weird CGI penis in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually a prosthetic that they framed and gave to Nicholas Hoult.
Which I think is
Stop ruining it for me.
But when he's running, it's CGI.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that thing's swinging.
It like runs around, or like flops around while he's running.
I think that's smart. I think that's an acceptable departure from the use of physical prosthetics.
Yeah, it is, but I could have just gone without it happening at all.
Yeah, I will say that his nudity in the 2024 film feels both very sexually threatening and very animalistic, because it is like, oh, you surprised him. You caught him off guard, and he's just going for it.
We could have known that.
Yeah, that's true. We could have used, that would have been a great use of more dramatic shadow.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
The yellow asterisk?
Yeah. What I thought was funny and what made me think about when you were talking about Skarsgård, I think the entire family, just as normal humans, already look a little unsettling. This might be a slightly hot take, but I feel like they're forever destined to play creepy characters. So whenever I see them, I'm like, something's off, but you're human. But just them as
Uncanny valley.
Yes, they're kind of uncanny valley.
You've got to come to the Andor panel tomorrow. Maybe we have a Murderbot panel, because it seems like that's a case where Alexander Skarsgård gets to play physical inhumanity and uncanniness in an interesting way.
And a vampire.
and he's played a Hankadelic vampire.
Last questions?
To your point about the ending and wanting more, I did as well, but I was hoping that they'd do something like anybody's ever seen the movie Quatermass in the Pit, 1967 Hammer film. At the very end, the two survivors of this whole ordeal are just sitting there like totally exhausted while there's these small flames and all that, all the destruction going on. And the credits roll very slowly. And they don't move, they don't say a word, they're just kind of sitting there shell-shocked. You know, they've been traumatized by this. And, you know, that would have spoken volumes
I would have been fine with that.
for the ending on that. One other point is talking about Willem Dafoe popping up in strange places. He had a blink and you'll miss him moment in The Hunger.
I did not know that.
I saw the credits and I thought, what? I must have blinked.
And I had this, speaking of running and comedy, I laughed the most recent viewing of 2024. There's a shot that you wouldn't remember very well, but three men are running through the streets to find where Orlok is sleeping, and whoever the body double is for Willem Dafoe is not a 70-year-old man. That is a 20-year-old running at top speed, and I had to laugh watching that.
I don't know what kind of wizard magic or Paracelsian alchemy is keeping
Maybe so, he might have gotten very
really
clever.
spry.
Maybe having that fight.
We're gonna get some.
Well, we are at 9:30.
Can we do quick plugs before we?
Yeah, I think quick plug, final plug. We can just go on and on.
I'm in another vampire presentation tomorrow night. It is called All the President's Vampires. It is about a true historical anomaly of a gentleman who was considered a vampire and found himself at the mercy of the highest offices in the land, and the legend of him continues to this day. So what we're going to do is we're going to investigate this gentleman and find out what really happened, how much of it is true, and how did he become a vampire, if he really ever was.
For my part, I'm on other panels, and including the indoor one tomorrow, but I will say that the panel on historical costuming and acceptable departures from historical accuracy is something I'm really looking forward to, and we'll have very little to talk about with regard to Nosferatu 2024, but hopefully more to talk about with other kind of horror adaptations.
I'm on the Jane Austen panel that is tomorrow, I believe, and then Trek panel, I think it's like the last year in Trek. I believe that one is on Saturday, but I could be off.
I am on the Rocky Horror Picture Show panel that's at 11:30 tonight.
Hell yeah.
I am on a Comfort Media panel tomorrow morning at 11. Cheesy Goodness panel, which is just cheesy movies and film and TV shows and stuff. That's tomorrow night at 11:30, and Galaxy Quest fan panel on Sunday afternoon.
Hell yeah. Also forgot on the folk horror panel tomorrow at 10 p.m. So, especially because I've got some Hammer fans in the house, I'd love to talk about uniquely British and uniquely international horror stuff.
And hopefully some recommendations.
Oh yeah.
I know there's a lot I haven't tapped.
That's one of my
Thanks,
favorite.
everybody.
Hell yeah. We're making this very well. I'm just gonna sit here and be like, God damn, that happened.